Uranus, which is currently retrograde, entering Taurus on November 7th at 9:22 p.m. Eastern Time. For context, this retrograde started on September 6th, and this was when we were in our little preview period. So I've talked about this many times in these classes. We are in the process of all of the outer planets changing signs. So we had a little preview period over the summer where Uranus entered Gemini. And it stationed retrograde starting on September 6th. And from that point, over the last 2 months, it has been backing up, and it is on the 7th that it re-enters Taurus. And it has been in Taurus previously. It had been there full-time since March 6, 2019. And then previously to that, there was a preview period. So it was there part-time in 2018. So this is a long period. This is like the better part of 7 years that Uranus was in this sign. So this is our last leg here. So to back it up, what is Uranus? Uranus is the planet of unexpected change, surprises, rebellion, and innovation. And Taurus, we were talking about for the full moon. And when you have Uranus in Taurus, which I have talked about this previously, so you can check this out on my blog. You can check this out on previous YouTube videos where I was discussing the move from Uranus into Gemini and how that differs from Uranus and Taurus. So if you want to go back, you can reference those. But, oh yeah, so I wrote down here, so I have a video from July, which was when the change happened. And then also a companion on the blog. So you can read about like what does it represent historically and get that context. So for this final leg in Taurus, we can expect a recalibration of our relationship with change and resistance. So Taurus represents resistance. It's very slow moving. It doesn't want to rush. And Uranus is like, ha, let's do this thing all of a sudden, unexpectedly out of left field. So they are archetypally like very at odds with each other, but we have been living in that for 7 years. So this very short, in the grand scheme, period that we are having where it's dipping back in there to basically the final degree and then exiting out, it's just putting a little button on it. It's the remaining paragraphs or pages in this story. And we talked about this for the Neptune retrograde back into Pisces that happened in October on the 22nd. So you can also go back and listen to that video as well that I talked about this same idea where it's like, okay, we're reflecting on the entire, in this case, 7-year period. We're reflecting on this year. We're reflecting on this period of time. Like, what have I really learned from this Uranus and Taurus transit? Because it's going to be closed, and then we're not going to be rereading this chapter again. So that's why when these outer planets move, it's so significant because they take so long to move around the zodiac that we're not going to encounter this. Future generations will, but we will not. So it is important to pay attention to what this is representing and try to extract some lessons from it as we then move into the new Uranus and Gemini chapter next year. So back to where I was. This is the final review of the overhaul that we've experienced personally or witnessed in the collective, the new dynamics related to Taurus themes of finance, consumption, so it could be media consumption, food consumption, information consumption, given that Uranus is about like new ideas, and innovation. So we can reflect on 2 different lenses. How have I experienced really big, long-term, fundamental change or experiencing the unexpected, dealing with resistance to change in this area of my chart, as in the entire sign of Taurus? And then how have I also witnessed change, innovation, specifically in Taurian themes like finance, food, and innovation for Uranus, etc., over the last basically 7 years. And when we can isolate what it is that we have learned, it makes it easier to start, finally, once it moves out, like embracing that change. And like I was talking about with the full moon earlier, that sometimes we need the start and ending point. We need the comparison. We need the contrast to know, okay, so if I look back, where was I March 6, 2019? Where was I scattered in 2018? Just simply, like, what was I doing? What was my life like in 2018? If you want to layer on your chart where you have Taurus, where was I in that area of life? And how has it experienced upheaval? How has it changed? How has it evolved? How have I incorporated technology or innovated, established new connections? We're going to be continuing to reflect also because of the fact that it's a retrograde. And retrogrades are about us doing all those rewords, reviewing, revisiting, redoing, etc. And this is about change. So we are going to be looking back inherently, like, how have things changed? Am I happy with how they've changed? Am I not happy with how they've changed? And then it will station direct. And then we'll have an opportunity to make those last changes before it leaves and it is goodbye off into Gemini for the next 6 to 7 years. When, and it may have been multiple times because of it moving so slowly and retrograding, when did Uranus pass over that node, whether it's the north node or the south node? For people who are not familiar with the nodes, I have a video on my YouTube channel from a previous lecture in late August, I think, right before the fall eclipse season started, where I explained what each of the nodes are. So that's a really good reference, just understanding them in general, but also understanding them in the context of eclipses astronomically and astrologically. So for the 8th house, again, this is like so meta, so big picture. Given that the 8th house is about transformation, it's about rebirth. When you have Uranus moving through there, it's like, I'm going to change like this. I'm going to change like that. And so it may feel like you've kind of jumped around and wanted to, not even necessarily that you wanted to, because again, sometimes it's just like things that happen, but just like a lot of changes popping up. And then because of the Taurus and because of whichever node it is, you're either trying to release it or you're trying to move towards it. So that would be a big indicator of whether you felt on board with this transit over the last 7 years or not, which node we're talking about. Because the baseline without any nodes there would be like, okay, there could be some resistance to it, but you're being encouraged to change because it is in the 8th house. And yeah, that also means wrapping in, including mental health and the financial side. So what is your relationship with money? Did you have experiences where you suddenly came into a lot of money, or you suddenly lost a lot of money, or had to pay a lot of money, or owe a lot of money? Is that a pattern that repeated over time, over those 7 years? I have the 11th house here. So for me, that could mean looking at those specific relationships. If we're talking about a relationship house, that's 11th house, technically 3rd, 4th house, 5th house, 7th house. Yeah. There's a lot of relationship houses. And so for any of those, you're especially observing what changes were there in those relationships. Did I suddenly have a lot of new friendships? Did I end a lot of friendships? Did I have a lot of people kind of coming in and going? Did I change at all what those types of relationships mean for me? Did I try some things that were a little unconventional or out of the box? Did I crave stability but then was having trouble finding it? Carrie, Chiron's in my 3rd house in Taurus. Definitely struggle with communication, particularly setting healthy boundaries. I've grown so much in these years with that. Great. So with Chiron, which we've talked about before, Chiron represents the wounded healer. So having Chiron in there is suggesting a lifelong journey of developing healing from and through your communication, connecting with your local surroundings, connecting with siblings and neighbors, and the Taurus traits. So how can if we're healing, but we're healing in a way that is slow, that is steady, that like wants to be safe. So it could be some of the things you've been trying to heal is your relationship with security. Healthy boundaries, I think, is interesting because Taurus as a fixed sign, it's like it does want to relate because it's interested in relationships and pleasure and engaging with the external, but then it's also kind of like the Cancer sign of, but like sometimes it just like wants to be the homebody and like be left alone. So have you, in addition, you could look at Uranus every time it was engaging with your Chiron placement. If you had like major shakes to your foundation, what were those experiences like for you, and how did you become stronger because of them?